The frost cracked beneath her boots, brittle and loud in the silence. Clara May didn't flinch. She adjusted Eunice's weight on her hip baby, burning hot against her chest and kept walking. Wind slicing through the torn lining of her coat like broken glass. Her other two kids shuffled behind her, small feet dragging across the crusted dirt. Will's thumb was back in his mouth. Nora hadn't spoken since dawn. No one cried anymore. That part was gone. The barn sat crooked on the horizon, ribs showing through the collapsed roof like something dying slow. Clara scanned it with eyes that had long stopped hoping. Shelter was shelter. Dead men didn't argue. She pushed the door open with her shoulder. The hinges squealed. Inside, shadows clung to the corners. A few broken boards. Some hay so old, it smelled more of rot than straw. But the wind died in here, and that was enough. She laid Uni down in a ragged nest, stripped off her own shawl, and wrapped it around the baby's body. The fever had climbed since last night. Skin like fire, eyes barely blinking. Clara had no water left. No food. No more tricks to play. She backed away, slow. Will clung to her leg. "I'll be right outside," she said. He didn't nod, just tightened his fingers. Clara stepped out and shut the door behind her, biting the inside of her cheek until she tasted iron. The sky was empty, that flat kind of gray that warned you nothing good was coming. She walked to the fence line. Old barbed wire sagging like tired breath. Beyond it, just dust and cold and space. A rattling cough shook Uni from inside the barn. Clara didn't turn. "If I stay, we die. If I move, I leave them alone." Her hand drifted to the inside of her coat, found the broken watch there. The glass was cracked, still ticking. It had belonged to Eli. Not her Eli. The Eli. The one who she stopped that thought cold. Behind her, a thud. Then another. Slow, deliberate. Hoofbeats. She turned. A man approached on a bay horse, coat flapping like torn canvas in the wind. Rifle slung easy across his back, face half-shadowed under a weathered hat. He didn't rush. Didn't call out? Just rode like the world owed him no hurry. Clara didn't move. She shifted her weight, but she didn't flinch. The man pulled up near the fence line and stayed mounted. "You're on Price land," he said. His voice was low, not sharp. Just stating. "I know. No threats," he added. "Just truth." Clara lifted her chin. "Then here's another. I got nowhere else to stand." The wind gusted sideways. The man studied her eyes hard to read from under the brim. Then he dismounted. Movement slow, like someone who didn't want to spook a wild animal. "Where'd you come from?" Clara didn't answer. He looked toward the barn, then at the small boots sticking out beneath the door. "No wagon," he noted. "No mule. It broke a mile east," she said. "We walked." "You walked?" Not a question. Just the shape of disbelief. She didn't blink. "Got food?" "The voice you selected does not support this language. Please click the upper right corner to switch to another voice." He unslung his saddlebag and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. Cornbread. Still warm enough to smell. He held it out, not stepping closer. Not smiling. "I ain't a skin for nothing," he said. "But if you don't eat, those little ones won't see another week." Clara's hands didn't move, but Will did. He stepped out from behind the barn door, grabbed the cornbread, and vanished back inside. The man said nothing, just nodded once. "You got a name?" he asked after a beat. Clara's jaw tightened. Dawn T. Matter. "Still helps to have one." She didn't answer. He tipped his hat. "Jack Rhodes." She didn't offer hers. Behind her, Uni whimpered again. Jack glanced past her, toward the barn. "You've got a fire in there?" She shook her head. "Then let's make one." "I didn't say yes." "You didn't say no." He moved toward the barn. Clara hesitated, then followed. Inside, Jack cleared a patch of dirt, found a rusted stove lid buried in rubble, and started stacking kindling like he'd done it 100 times. Maybe he had. His movements were quiet, sure, Not in a hurry, but not wasting time either. Clara sat near Uni, feeding her a crumb at a time. The baby barely chewed. Will sat cross-legged, eyes wide. Nora tucked herself under Clara's arm, silent. Jack didn't speak. He lit the flame. The fire caught, weak but real. Smoke coiled upward, curling through holes in the rafters. Clara stared at the man across from her. "You price?" she asked. He shook his head. "Work for M." "That make this your land?" "No," he said, "but I ride it. Fence patrol. You gonna ride back and tell someone?" "Not tonight." Silence stretched. "I don't need saving," she said flat. "I didn't offer." Uni coughed again. Clara shifted, pulled her closer. Outside, wind scraped across the siding. Something creaked. Jack unhooked his coat and draped it near the fire to warm, then pulled a dented tin from his pack beans, blackened from old heat. Clara's eyes locked on it like it was gold. He saw it. Didn't he say anything? Just set the tin close to the coals. "You don't trust me," he said after a while. "Should I?" "The voice you selected does not support this language. Please click the upper right corner to switch to another voice." That almost made her laugh. Almost. Uni stirred, reaching for the warmth. Clara held her tighter. "Why are you really out here?" she asked, low. Jack didn't look up. "Checking fence line." "On a night like this?" He shrugged. "Cows don't know Sunday." Another beat passed. "My husband used to say that," she said, mostly to the flames. Jack didn't reply. Didn't press. That was almost worse. The beans bubbled. Jack wrapped his bandana around the tin and nudged it toward her. "Feed them first." Clara took it without thanks. The smell hit her like memory. She fed Will, then Nora, then Uni. Finally, herself. Every bite hurt in her chest, like chewing shame. "You got nowhere to go," Jack said. She said nothing. "There's a bunkhouse past the ridge," he went on. "Warm. Work is honest. Miss Bess runs it tight, but fair." Clara stared at the dirt. "I can't owe nobody," she whispered. Jack's voice softened. "You won tea. There's work if you want it. Trade, not pity." Still, she didn't speak. He stood. "I'll be back at dawn," he said. "If you're still here, I'll take that as a yes." He walked out into the night. Clara didn't stop him. She sat by the fire until the smoke stopped hurting her eyes. She didn't say yes, but she didn't run either. Outside, a light blinked far off to steady to be a star. Something's coming. Dawn hadn't broken yet, but the barn glowed faint orange from the embers Jack Rhodes had left behind. Clara hadn't slept. Her back ached from the boards, and her right arm had gone numb from cradling Uni all night. The baby was still burning up. Every shallow breath sounded like it cost something. Will lay curled in the hay, his arm flung over Nora, who clutched a scrap of torn quilt like it was a shield. They had dainty stirred. Clara envied them. She stepped outside, boots crunching over the frostbitten dirt. The horizon was still a bruise. The wind had dropped, but cold hung in the air like a verdict not yet spoken. She stared into the open stretch of prairie. Empty. Then she heard its soft hoofbeats, not rushed. Purposeful. He came like he said he would. Jack Rhodes crested the ridge, a burlap sack slung behind his saddle, his silhouette cutting sharp against the pale sky. He didn't wave. Didn't smile. Just kept riding until he reached the barn. Clara didn't move. Arms folded, coat wrapped tight. Jack dismounted, tied his horse to a fence post, and met her eyes. "I brought flour, salt, some dried beans," he said, slinging the sack over his shoulder. "I didn't say yes." "I know." He paused. "But you're still here." Clara looked past him. The field, the fence, the wide nothingness pressing in from every side. She didn't nod. Didn't argue. "I don't like owing people." "You won tea." Jack's tone was even. "Their S-work. You can call it trade, if that sits better." She didn't answer. He didn't push. Just turned toward the barn. Clara followed. Inside, Will was already sitting up, rubbing his eyes. Nora blinked at the light, hair a tangled mess. Uni let out a weak cry, barely more than a whimper. Jack crouched beside the stove, stirred the coals with a stick, and added slivers of wood. Flame caught again, casting long shadows against the broken boards. He handed the burlap to Clara. She checked inside: salt, beans, flour, and a tin cup. Nothing fancy, just enough to keep breath in their lungs. She nodded, silent thanks. "Bunkhouse ain't far," Jack said. "Miss Bess keeps it clean. We ride slow. You and the kids should manage." Clara glanced at her children. "And if we stay, you'll pull your weight. Clean, cook, maybe tend the garden come spring." She folded the burlap closed. "What about the kids?" "There's a widow up there, Bess. Tougher than leather and twice as sharp. She'll keep Em in line." Uni stirred, coughing. Clara didn't hesitate. She scooped her up, wrapped her in the shawl, and pulled her close. "You got horses?" she asked. "I got one." Jack looked at Will. "You ride." Will stared at him, then nodded. "Good," Jack said. "You'll help your sister?" Will didn't blink. They broke camp in silence. Jack tied Clara's bundle to his saddle. Clara carried Uni. Will helped Nora climb onto the back of Jack's horse. Clara hesitated before letting them ride ahead. Trust wasn't something she gave easy. But Jack sat straight, rein steady. He didn't look back. She walked behind them. The trail wound through a canyon, wind sighing through dry cottonwoods. Red dust mixed with frost beneath her boots. The sun hadn't risen far, but light had started finding its way between the stones. By the time they reached the ridge, Clara's legs shook. Her coat clung to her with sweat. Then she saw it. The bunkhouse sat like an old promise wooden frame. Roof patched with tin, a black stovepipe curling smoke into the sky. Chickens scratched near the fence. A windmill creaked slow and heavy. Jack dismounted, then helped the children down. Clara reached for Uni. The baby whimpered but didn't cry. The door opened before they knocked. She was tall, bones sharp, braid white, and thick as rope, eyes like flint. "Miss Bess," Jack said. The woman didn't smile, just gave Clara a long look. "You've got your hands full." "I manage," Clara said. Bess nodded once. "You'll help in the kitchen. Mornings and supper. We keep a clean house. I'm not afraid of work." "Good." Inside, the air smelled of soap, smoke, and iron. Iron beds lined the walls. Too many for comfort, but enough for bodies. A long table sat in the center, worn smooth with years. Jack dropped the burlap on the table. Clara unpacked it slowly, setting each item down like it mattered. Miss Bess handed her a tin bowl with hot oatmeal and a boiled egg for each child. The kids didn't speak. They ate like they didn't trust it was real. Clara stood back, watching them. Her hands trembled. Jack nodded toward the stove. "You warm enough?" She didn't answer. "I'll check fence line," he said. "Be back after rounds." He turned, boots heavy on the floor, and stepped outside. Clara didn't watch him go. Instead, she found a cot in the corner and set Uni down gently. Then she rolled up her sleeves and looked at Bess. "What do you need first?" Bess studied her. "Floor slothy." Clara found a bucket, filled it from the pump outside, and got to work. She scrubbed until her back screamed and her knuckles split. She mended a curtain with thread too fine for the linen. Peeled potatoes beside Bess without a word. No one asked her story. No one had to. If you were still standing, you belonged. That afternoon, Clara stepped outside alone. The sky was bruised purple. Cold settled in her chest like a question she didn't want to ask. The windmill turned once, twice, steady. Then she saw him. Jack rode along the far ridge, shadow long across the field. He didn't T-wave, didn't T-slow, but he looked, and she looked back. They didn't T-smile. They didn't need to. That night, Clara tucked Will and Nora into a shared cot. Uni breathed easier, curled against her chest. She sat near the fire long after the others slept, mending a ripped hem with hands still red from scrubbing. Something shifted. Not in the house. In her, it was in T comfort. Not yet, but it wasn't fear either. When the door creaked open, she didn't flinch. Jack stepped in, eyes scanning the quiet. Just checking. Clara met his gaze. I was ready to quit, she said. The words came out raw. I thought if I could lie down long enough, maybe the wind would take me. Jack didn't speak. She looked at her hands. But then she cried, Clara whispered, glancing at Uni. And I didn't. Jack nodded. Just once. Outside, the wind picked up. Not sharp. Alive. He turned to leave. Clara's voice stopped him. Why are you doing this? He looked at her for the first time. Not just at her, but into her. Quiet, he said, because once someone did it for me. Then he stepped outside, and the door closed behind him. If you want to stay strong, Roy said, watching her mop the floor till her knuckles bled, stop mistaking survival for silence. The fire cracked low. Something had started. But it hadn't finished. Not yet. The bunkhouse woke before the sun. Heat bled slow from the stove in the center. Casting long shadows across the floorboards Clara had scrubbed raw the day before. She moved through the dark in silence, her boots muffled by hay and grit, already measuring the day by what needed fixing. Miss Bess handed her a dented kettle and nodded toward the pump. Boil it good. Cold still hanging on? No, good morning? No, thank you. But Clara didn't expect softness. Not here. Not anymore. She filled the kettle, carried it back in both hands, and set it over the fire with care. Her palms stung from the heat. That pain was easier to carry. Behind her, Will and Nora stirred. Uni was still asleep, breath steady for the first time in days. Clara let herself watch her daughter's chest rise and fall, slow and even, like the world hadn't tried to steal it yesterday. Jack hadn't returned that morning. She hadn't expected him to. Men like that didn't come around unless they meant to. And even then, they didn't stay long. By mid-morning, the children were fed and bundled. Nora clung to Clara's apron until Miss Bess handed her a spoon and pointed toward a pot of stew. If she stirs it, she stays out of trouble, Bess muttered. Will wandered outside, curious. Clara followed with one eye. That's when she saw him, a figure hunched near the stables, movements slow and exact. Royce called her. He moved like a man who had once been fast but learned to be careful. Tall, shoulders thick from years of labor. A jagged scar split across the back of his neck, half hidden by the collar of his coat. He was oiling a saddle, hands blackened, sleeves rolled up to the elbows. He didn't glance her way, just kept working. Who's he? Will asked, standing beside her now. Stable hand, Clara said. Will watched for a long moment. He don't talk much. Neither do you. That earned her a side glance and a half smile. Then Will slipped away, drifting toward the man like a moth to heat. Clara didn't move. Didn't interrupt? Royce noticed the boy, of course. He didn't speak, but he handed Will a brush without a word and pointed to a nearby saddle. Will took it with both hands like it was gold. They didn't talk. They just worked. Clara stood there longer than she meant to. By the time she returned inside, Bess was scowling. You got potatoes to peel and a curtain needs mending, she snapped. Yes, ma'am, Clara said, rolling up her sleeves. That afternoon, she sat on the porch steps, needle in hand, patching the thin curtain torn at the seams. The sun was high but not warm. The wind carried dust and the faint scent of horses. Royce passed her, arms full of feed. He nodded once. She nodded back. You teach that boy of mine to brush leather? Didn't need much teachin', Royce said, voice dry as timber. She let a small smile flicker and kept stitching. A pause. Then he spoke again, not looking at her. I did 7 years. Clara stopped mid-stitch. For what? He didn't answer. Not right away. Then took a swing. Didn't he stop swinging? She nodded once. Fair enough. I don't mind watching over the boy. I didn't ask. You didn't need to. They let the silence settle. I was 19, he added, quieter now. Didn't know how to pull back. Paid for it. Now I work. She looked up at him, thread between her fingers. That what this place is? Penance. No, he said. It's where they stopped looking at me like a loaded gun. Clara turned her eyes back to the fabric. Royce walked off without another word. That night, Jack returned just before dark, face wind-burned, jacket stiff with trail dust. He didn't step inside. Just leaned against the post by the door, watching her ladle stew into tin bowls for the kids. You're late, she said. Fence lines got holes. Coyotes got bold. He didn't say more. Didn't he need to? After supper, Clara stepped outside with him. Your boy's handy with a blade, Jack said. Royce showed him a trick or two. He needs someone to teach him how to be steady, Clara said. Royce is steady. And dangerous. Jack looked at her, eyes steady. You ain't scared of danger. You're scared of trusting what you can't fix. She didn't reply. He nodded toward the barn. Come with me. She followed. Inside, the air was heavy with hay and old wood. Jack pulled something from his saddlebag. A cloth-wrapped bundle. He set it on the work table and unfolded it. A pair of boots. Worn but clean. Stitching along the sides. The soles mended. Your feet drag when you walk. I noticed. She stared at them. Then at him. Yours. My mother's, he said. She wore M when she worked the fields. Been sittin' too long on a shelf. Clara didn't move. I&T offering charity. I know. She reached out. Ran her fingers over the leather. I'll take 'em, she said. But I'll earn M. He gave her the faintest smile. You already did. They stood there, a beat too long. The wind howled past the rafters. I was never meant to be here, Clara said quietly. Jack didn't flinch. None of us were. We just stayed. He walked her back to the bunkhouse. Before stepping away, he met her eyes. Folks around here don't ask questions, he said. But they notice. She nodded. I've noticed too, he added, voice softer. You breathe different now. Clara tilted her head. That's so? He gave her a long look. You don't flinch at silence anymore. He stepped off the porch and vanished into the dark. Inside, Will was asleep, curled around Junie. Nora sat near the stove, eyes half-lidded, singing something under her breath. Clara brushed hair from her daughter's cheek, heart thudding steady. Royce stood near the wall, arms folded. You're a hard worker, he said, almost offhand. She turned. You watching me now? Everyone watches everyone, he said. Difference is who owns it. Clara folded the curtain she'd just mended, pressed it flat. You say that like it means something. It does, Royce replied. Then after a beat, if you want to stay strong, stop mistaking survival for silence. She looked at him for a long second, then turned away. But the words stuck. Long after the fire dimmed, outside, a lantern flickered in the far distance. Not Jack, not Royce. Someone else. Watching, waiting, and Clara knew silence wouldn't save her now. The sun came up cold the next morning, casting a pale light across the frostbitten garden patch behind the bunkhouse. Clara stood in the doorway, arms folded, watching Uni toddle half-heartedly through the brittle grass. The baby's legs still wobbled, but she was stronger, now her cough less harsh, her eyes less glassy. Nora chased after a chicken, giggling under her breath. Will sat near the trough, carving something small from a chunk of wood with a dull pocket knife Royce had loaned him. The boy worked in silence, tongue tucked to one side like it helped him concentrate. Clara let herself breathe. Inside, stew simmered low. The beds had been made, floors swept, curtains rehung. She'd mended 6 shirts that week, chopped 3 baskets of potatoes, and only cried once behind the barn, where no one saw. That counted as progress. Jack hadn't come in 3 days. She hadn't asked why. Miss Bess, however, had noticed. Man like him don't ride quiet unless he's carrying something heavy. The old woman muttered over her morning coffee. Clara didn't take the bait, just stirred the beans and listened. She'd started humming again, Nothing loud. Just small melodies from before, scraps of songs her mama used to sing while shelling peas in a kitchen long gone. The notes drifted out sometimes before she realized they were hers. Jack noticed. He came back the next afternoon, saddle worn with dust, coat dark with wind. He stood at the fence while Will waved from across the yard. Clara met him halfway, arms crossed, face unreadable. "You been ghosting us," she said. "I've been thinking," he replied. "Dangerous habit." He smiled just enough, then handed her a paper bag. Inside coffee grounds, 2 apples, and a single peppermint stick. "For the kids," he said. Clara held the bag like it weighed more than it did. They sat together on the back steps while the sun dipped behind the ridge. Uni dozed on her lap. Will sat near Jack's boots, whittling. Nora tried braiding the chicken's feathers. No one said much. "You always been like this?" Clara asked finally. "Like what?" "Still, like you carry silence on your back." Jack leaned back on his elbows, eyes on the clouds. "Grew up west of here. Folks kept to themselves. You had something to say, you earned the right to say it. Guess I'm still earning." He turned toward her. "I've heard more truth from you in 5 minutes than I've heard from most in 5 years. Clara scoffed. "Truth ain't always useful." "No," Jack agreed, "but it's always there." Behind them, Royce hammered a loose board into place on the side of the barn. He didn't look over. Didn't he interrupt? "You talked to him?" Jack asked. "Royce." Jack nodded. "A little. He's seen worse than he tells," Jack said. "Still gets up early. Still shows up. That's worth something." They sat in silence. Clara's hand moved absently over Eunice's back. "You ever get tired?" she asked. Jack didn't move. "Every damn day." "Then why keep going?" He looked at her. "Because no one ever showed up for me. Not when it counted." Clara's throat tightened. She didn't answer. Instead, she said, "You fix fences on Sundays. You bring coffee and don't stay for supper. You don't ask questions. What do you want, Jack?" He hesitated. "I want you to see yourself the way I do." She blinked. "That's a dangerous thing to say." "It's not a promise. Just a hope." Later that evening, Royce found Clara behind the bunkhouse, sitting alone. He didn't sit. Just leaned against the side of the building, arms folded. "You breathe different," he said. Clara glanced at him. "Jack said that too." "He's not wrong." She didn't reply. Royce stepped forward and held something out, a small, flat piece of wood. Smoothed edges, hand-carved letters. Still standing. She took it, traced the letters with her thumb. "You make this?" Royce nodded. "Used to carve names into jailhouse walls. Now I carve reminders." "What's this supposed to remind me of?" "That Fallon ain't the worst part. It's forgetting you can stand again." Clara swallowed. "I don't know if I believe that yet." "You don't have to," Royce said. "You're still here. That is belief enough." He walked off before she could answer. That night, Clara sat by the fire stitching the last of the ripped shirts. Miss Bess sat across the room, reading a Bible with her glasses low on her nose. Nora lay curled up under the quilt. Will slept on the floor beside Eunice's crib. Jack hadn't stayed. He never did. But the peppermint stick sat on the table, broken in half, shared without ceremony. Clara stitched in silence, the carved piece of wood resting on the table beside her needle. She didn't pray. She didn't whisper. But she remembered. The way Eli's voice used to sound when he called her girl from across the field. The way silence had followed his death like a shadow that never backed off. The way people looked through her afterward, like grief made her invisible. Not here. Not now. Her fingers moved slower, more certain. The wind rattled outside but didn't find a way in. She looked down at Uni, her tiny hand wrapped around Will's sleeve. Clara set the shirt aside and leaned back. For the first time in months, her bones didn't ache with fear, but something else did. Hope. It itched. It pulled. It asked questions she didn't have answers for. What if she stayed? What if she let herself want more than survival? She stood, stretched, and walked to the window. Outside, the ridge was quiet, but she knew Jack was out there somewhere, watching fences, watching her. And for once, she wasn't scared of being seen. I thought if I let myself want again, I might never survive the fall. She turned from the window, heart loud in her chest. Tomorrow would bring more questions. And maybe if she didn't, ran answer. The sun had barely cleared the ridge when Jack Rhodes came riding in from the south trail. Clara was bent over a patch of frozen herbs near the bunkhouse, fingers numb inside threadbare gloves, trying to salvage anything that hadn't already died under frost. He reined in but didn't dismount. Clara stood, brushing dirt from her palms. "You re early. I figured if I waited, you'd talk yourself out of it." She squinted toward him. Out of what? Jack slid off the saddle, slow and easy. He didn't come close, just reached into a saddlebag and pulled out a folded map, yellowed and soft at the corners. He held it out. She didn't take it right away. Jack, didn't he push? "What is it?" "Land." He pointed at a corner of the paper. "East of Burnt Creek. 3 acres. Never been built on. Spring cuts through the bottom. Bit of sun. Bit of shade." Clara finally took the map, unfolded it, studied the marks, her brow furrowing. "This yours?" "My grandfather S. Then my father S. Now mine. But I've never done nothin' with it." "And what do you want with me?" Her voice was quiet, flat. Jack stepped forward a hair. "To build." Clara's laugh was dry. "A house?" "Something close." She folded the map again, tighter this time. "You skin me to marry you? The voice you selected does not support this language. Please click the upper right corner to switch to another voice." That startled her more than a yes might have. "I'm a skin if you want to build." "Not for me." "With me?" Clara said nothing. The cold pressed in between them, sharp and dry. Jack didn't fill the silence. She looked back toward the bunkhouse, smoke curling soft from the chimney. She saw Uni through the window, chasing dust motes with her fists. Nora folded linens with Miss Bess. Will sat on the porch rail, carving again. "I got 3 kids," she said. "I know. I don't have land, or money, or a name that means anything." "I know that too." Her voice cracked before she meant it to. "And if I say yes, and then I fall apart again?" Jack looked at her, steady and quiet. "Then I'll be there when you do." Clara blinked, hard. Her hands clenched around the folded map. "I can't promise I won't run. I ain't a skin for promises." He reached up and touched the brim of his hat. "Just think on it." And he turned, mounted, and rode back the way he came, leaving nothing but hoof prints and a wind that suddenly felt louder. Clara didn't move for a long time. Later that afternoon, she found Royce in the stable, hammering out a bent horseshoe. Sparks flew with every strike. She stood in the doorway. "You ever feel like you're not allowed to want more?" Royce didn't stop working. All the damn time. "What do you do with it?" He finally looked up, sweat beading his forehead. "I feed it just enough to keep from starving. Not enough to start begging." Clara stepped inside. "He asked me to build with him." Royce didn't flinch. "You say yes?" "I said I'd think." He nodded, went back to hammering. "I'm scared," she said. "Good," he grunted. "That's your advice?" "You're only scared of what matters. Ain't no fear in giving up. Only in wantin' something real." She stared at him. "You think I'm ready?" Roy set the horseshoe aside and wiped his hands on his apron. "I think you're still standing. That counts for a lot." Clara left the stables with her jaw set and her mind spinning. That night, she tucked the kids into bed early. Miss Bess didn't ask questions when Clara took her coffee out back, alone. The stars were sharp above, the kind of cold that made the air feel thinner. Every breath reminded her she was still here. She pulled the map from her coat, unfolded it slow. The land was nothing special, just lines and ink. But the idea, the choice, that was something else. She didn't hear Jack ride up, didn't know he was there until he said, "I didn't mean to scare you." She folded the map fast, tucking it back inside her coat. "You always sneak up on folks?" Only when they're thinking too loud. He stepped off the horse, tied it to the post. I ain't here to press. Then why are you here? Jack looked at her with that same stillness she'd come to know. Because I've seen folks walk so long, they forget what it means to stop. She didn't look at him. He sat on the step, hands clasped between his knees. You carry yourself like someone waiting. For what? For someone to stay. Clara let the silence hang between them. Then she said, You're kind, Jack. That a bad thing? It is when it costs you. He looked at her, really looked. You ever stop and think maybe I'm not looking to trade? She didn't answer. He went on, voice softer now. I lost a brother in a storm like this. We were out pooling a calf. Got split up. I found him a day later. Cold as the dirt he laid in. Clara's breath caught. I was 15, Jack said. Since then, I don't leave folks behind. Not when I can help it. She closed her eyes. You ain't a skin me to decide now. The voice you selected does not support this language. Please click the upper right corner to switch to another voice. But you're a skin me to see it? Jack nodded. Not what's gone. What is here? She didn't say anything else. Didn't T need to? They sat in silence, firelight flickering behind the window, children breathing deep just feet away. And for the first time in a long while, Clara let herself picture something beyond tomorrow. Something that wasn't just surviving. I never wanted to be saved, she whispered. But I don't mind being seen. Jack didn't move. He didn't need to. He just stayed. The frost had begun to melt in patches, leaving streaks of wet dirt across the yard like bruises healing slow. March had come, loud in the mornings and quiet in the afternoons. The bunkhouse creaked less now. Fires burned shorter. Boots tracked more mud than ice. Clara May moved through the kitchen like she belonged there. Miss Bess had handed her the key to the dry goods pantry 2 days ago, said nothing but don't waste nothin', and left it at that. For someone like Bess, that was near enough to a benediction. Outside, the men hammered fence posts back into thawed soil. Royce had taken Will under his wing proper, teaching him how to hold a nail with one hand and steady a plank with the other. Nora helped in the garden, following Clara's every movement like a second shadow. Uni had taken to falling asleep in the sunlight, fists full of hay. Mouth around a carved wooden spoon she refused to give up. Jack was around more now, not every day, but often enough that Clara's chest stirred when she heard hoofbeats, and only settled once she saw it was him. He didn't bring gifts anymore, just showed up. With tools, with time, with silence. One afternoon, Clara found him in the henhouse, fixing a split in the roof. He was swearing under his breath and bleeding from one knuckle, the sky gray above them like it might break again. She leaned on the doorframe, arms folded. You always curse when you build. Jack looked up. Only when the damnwood doesn't listen. She handed him a rag. Try token nicer. He smirked, but took the rag. They worked side by side, him on the roof, her collecting eggs with Nora, the air full of feathers and low clucking. Uni washed from the porch wrapped in a quilt too big for her body, thumb in her mouth. Later, they sat on the steps, sipping the coffee Clara had boiled too long, but neither of them complained. You always make it strong, Jack said. You always finish it. He nodded like that settled something. They watched the light fade over the trees. The garden lay bare still, but Clara had turned the soil earlier that week. Dark earth. Richer than she remembered. Jack stretched his legs, boots creaking. You ever think about setting roots? Clara didn't look at him. You mean staying past spring? I mean for good. She let out a long breath. I don't know if I belong here. Jack didn't flinch. You've been feeding 10 men and 3 kids every night for 2 months. If that don't count, I don't know what does. Clara kept her eyes on the field. I didn't mean the bunkhouse, Jack. He waited. I meant this life. All of it. The wind picked up. The chickens rustled in their coop. You still think you're just passing through? He asked. Clara nodded, slow. For a long time, surviving was the only plan. Now I don't know how to want more than that. Jack's voice was low, steady. I think you do. She turned to him. He didn't move. just watched her like she might disappear if he blinked. You just forgot how, he added. Clara swallowed hard. There was something in his voice, no pressure, no pity, just belief. Like he saw the version of her she wasn't sure existed yet. You carry yourself like someone who's been waiting, Jack said. For what? For someone to stay. She looked away. Her hands tightened around the mug. You're kind, Jack. I know. That is dangerous. I know that too. He didn't lean in. He didn't touch her. He just stayed. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, Clara sat alone at the table sewing a patch on one of Royce's sleeves. Miss Bess was already in bed. The bunkhouse quieted like it always did after supper, just the crackle of the stove and the occasional sigh of timber settling. Royce came in from the dark, snowflakes clinging to his coat. He pulled off his gloves, shook out his sleeves, and nodded toward the fabric in her lap. You fix things like you're Savinem, he said. Clara raised an eyebrow. Is that a complaint? No, he said. It's a compliment. She finished the stitch, tied it off. Royce poured himself a cup of coffee and leaned against the wall. You remember the first night you got here? Clara nodded. You looked like if someone offered you hope, you'd punch him in the mouth. She didn't smile, but her mouth twitched. I still might. He sipped quiet. You're different now. Clara shrugged. Doesn't feel like it. It is, he said. You stand straighter. You look people in the eye now. She didn't answer. Royce looked into his cup. I seen folks lost before, wandering so long they forget who they were. But you were sinking, Clara, not broken. Just drown. Her breath hitched. She kept her eyes on the thread. And now? She asked, voice almost a whisper. Now you're swimming. The words settled in the room like dust. He set his cup down and nodded once before heading to the back room. Clara sat in silence. Then she folded the shirt, placed it beside the others, and leaned back in her chair. Outside, the wind had died. In its place, quiet. The kind that wasn't hollow. The kind that felt like breath. You were sinking, Clara. Not broken. Just drowning. And now you're swimming. She whispered the words to herself once, then let them go. Upstairs, Will turned in his sleep. Uni coughed lightly and went still again. In the corner, the piece Royce carved still sat on the shelf, still standing. Clara stared at it for a long time. Then she stood, pulled her shawl around her shoulders, opened the door, and stepped out into the cold night. The stars blinked clear above the ridge. She didn't say anything, but she hoped he was out there. And she hoped he knew she saw him too. The first sign came in silence. The bunkhouse woke to the kind of hush that wasn't natural, no wind, no birds, not even the restless creak of wood. Royce was the first to notice. He stepped outside before dawn, boots crunching frost, rifle slung across his back. His shoulders tightened the second he looked east. A thin plume of smoke curled against the sky, too far to be theirs. Too dark to be morning cook fire. By the time Clara stepped onto the porch, wrapping her shawl tight, Royce was already saddling his horse. What is it? She asked. He didn't answer right away. Just adjusted the cinch. That ridge past Dry Creek, he finally said. Old land claim. Been empty for years. Clara squinted through the dim light. You think someone's out there? Royce met her eyes. I know someone is. Before she could ask more, Jack rode in, fast and sharp. His coat flared at the back, face lined hard. You saw it? Royce called out. Jack nodded as he dismounted. Campfire smoke. 4, maybe 5 riders? One of 'em's got a rifle long as my arm. Clara felt something stir low in her chest. Not fear. Not yet. But something old. Instinct. Jack looked at her, his voice calm but clipped. You need to take the kids into town. Clara frowned. That far out? He didn't blink. Not talkin' chances. Behind her, the door opened. Will stepped out, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Clara turned to Jack. They don't know we're here. You sure about that? He asked. She wasn't. Royce tightened his saddle and swung up into it. I'll ride north. Loop around. See if they're setting up camp or scanning. Jack nodded. Meet back here by noon. If they're moving closer, we decide then. Clara stepped forward, catching Jack's arm. You think they're bounty? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. She let go. Keep the kids inside, he said, mounting again. Lock the pantry. Keep the lamp lit. Then both men rode off, their horses cutting through frost and early light. Back inside, Miss Bess had already packed dry biscuits, water skins, and blankets into a rucksack. She didn't say a word when Clara entered, just handed her a rifle. Clara took it without hesitation. By mid-morning, the tension had thickened. The kids sensed it, even if they didn't understand. Uni wouldn't stop clinging. Will tried to act normal carving by the stove, pretending he wasn't watching every window. Nora stood at the back door like a guard dog. Clara stoked the fire once, twice, just to keep her hands busy. She kept listening for hoofbeats. When they came, it wasn't from Royce. 3 riders approached from the south trail. Not fast, casual even. That made it worse. She moved the kids behind the curtain, motioned for silence, then stepped out onto the porch with the rifle slung low but visible. The man in front wore a red scarf and a cocky grin. His horse was too clean for someone rough. His boots, polished. Ma'am, he said, tipping his hat. Didn't mean to spook nobody. Clara didn't speak. We're just passing through, he continued. Looking for someone. Plenty of folks out west, she said flatly. He smiled wider. Sure are. But this one, special. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. Let it fall open. Clara didn't move to take it, but she saw the sketch from where she stood. Crude, charcoal, but unmistakable. Her face, a younger version. Her breath locked in her chest. You seen her? The man asked, voice light, mocking. Clara held his eyes wide. The second rider chuckled. Ain't for us to say. She dangerous? Clara asked. The third man, quiet till now, finally spoke. Not to us. But someone wants her bad. Clara cocked her head. Must be something she did. The first rider's grin faltered just slightly. That's the thing with stories, ma'am. Depends who's tellin' 'em. She didn't answer. He looked past her, toward the barn. You got kids out here? Clara raised the rifle. Don T. He held up both hands. Fair enough. Then he folded the poster and tucked it away. Well, if you do see her, tell her Dusty Reeves says hello. With a wink, he turned his horse. The others followed. They didn't ride fast. That meant they weren't done. Clara watched until they disappeared down the trail. Then she turned, shut the door, and locked it. Inside, Will stood at the table, hands clenched. That was about you, wasn't it? She nodded. Yes. Why are they looking for you? She knelt to his height. Because some men don't like women who don't stay quiet? Uni whimpered. Clara pulled her close. Miss Bess didn't ask questions. Just lit the second oil lamp and bolted the back door. An hour later, Jack returned. Mud on his boots, eyes sharper than usual. Clara told him what happened. Every word. When she finished, Jack just nodded once. Dusty Reeves, he muttered. That bastard's been chasing coins since Kansas. They had a sketch, she said. They know who they're after. Jack didn't flinch. Then it's time we stop running. Clara blinked. What do you mean? He stepped closer. You said surviving was all you knew. That ends now. She shook her head. You don't know what they'll do. I know they think you're alone. He rested a hand on her shoulder. You ain't he. Clara didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, she reached into the cupboard, pulled out the revolver Royce had cleaned last week, and checked the chamber. 6 bullets. Jack's mouth twitched. You always keep that loaded? She handed it to him. No, but now I do. They stood in silence. Outside, the wind had picked up again. But it wasn't fear anymore. It was readiness. She looked toward the north trail, heart steady. If they want a ghost, Clara said, They're going to find a woman still breathin'. The morning came quiet. No smoke. No riders. No sound but the rustle of wind through thawed branches and the low hum of waking earth. Clara stood on the porch, boots wet with dew, eyes scanning the tree line. Her rifle leaned against the railing, untouched since sundown. Jack sat beside her, hat pulled low, chewing on a sliver of dried apple, calm as always, but not idle. Never idle. His hand rested near the holster on his hip. For 2 nights, they'd waited. Reeves hadn't come back. Not yet. Miss Bess had taken the children into town with a wagon and a tight jaw, promising to keep them hidden for a few days. Royce stayed behind with Clara and Jack, checking the trails, marking tree lines, setting simple alarms, nothing flashy. Just careful hands and practiced patience. But now, the quiet was stretching too long. It made her wonder. Jack glanced at her. They ain't gonna knock. I know. You sleep? The voice you selected does not support this language. Please click the upper right corner to switch to another voice. He nodded like he hadn't either. From inside the bunkhouse, the sound of metal scraping would echo to signal. Royce. He stepped out, wiping his hands. Northridge, he said. Fresh tracks. But they split. Clara frowned. Split? Yeah. 1 toward town. 2 looped east. 1 doubled back west. He looked to Jack. They're drawing us thin. Jack stood. Then we hold here. Let 'em come. Clara stiffened. If 1 went toward town, Miss Bess won't let him near the kids, Royce said flatly. And I'd like to see a man try. That didn't comfort her, but she nodded anyway. Worry was a luxury. And Clara May Hadley no longer lived in the land of luxuries. That afternoon passed slow. The tension didn't spike, it seeped. Into their shoulders. Into their speech. Into the soft clink of forks against tin at supper. No one talked much. No one needed to. By dusk, the air shifted. And they knew. Clara saw the glint first. A flash through trees. Low sun catching on something metal. Jack was already moving. Barn, he whispered. Now, they positioned fast. Clara in the loft, Jack near the front. Royce crouched near the woodpile out back. 3 lines of defense. No escape plan. Didn't T need one? They weren't running this time. Minutes passed. Then hoofbeats. Not galloping. Measured. Intentional. The kind of pace a man used when he wanted to be heard before he was seen. Clara steadied her breath. Finger on the trigger. Not trembling. Then Reeves stepped into the open, red scarf bold as blood across his chest. Behind him, 2 others. 1 with a shotgun. 1 with a rifle. They didn't speak. Just stood there. Until Reeves smiled. I figured you'd be stubborn, he called out. But I hoped you'd be smart. No answer. He glanced toward the barn. You in there, Clara? Still silence. You made it farther than most, he went on. But you should know by now, there's no outrunnin' ghosts. From the loft, Clara raised the barrel. I'm not runnin', she called. Reeves turned slightly toward the sound. Ah, there she is. The widow who thinks she's a wolf. I'm not a widow, Clara said. Not anymore. Reeves laughed. That's so? Then who's protectin' you now? He took a step forward. Jack stepped out from the shadows. I am. Reeves paused. Well, he said, in tea this romantic. He tilted his head. What's she got on you, cowboy? Jack didn't flinch. Nothing. Then why you riskin' your neck for her? Jack's voice was low. Solid. Because she ain't a crime. Reeves' eyes narrowed. Then he drew. Quick. But not quicker than Clara. The crack of her rifle split the air. Reeves' shoulder jerked back. He staggered, dropped to a knee, cursed loud. Before the others could react, Royce fired from behind. The man with the shotgun fell sideways. The last man bolted for the trees, but Jack's bullet caught him in the thigh. He went down screaming. Dust settled. Reeves groaned, crawling backward, blood staining his shirt. Clara climbed down from the loft. approached slow. Rifle still in hand? Jack didn't stop her. Royce didn't need to. She stood over Reeves, breathing hard. Mud on her boots, hair wild. "You came for a ghost," she said. He looked up, sneering. "You ain't worth a bounty." "No," she agreed. "I'm worth more." He opened his mouth to spit, but she raised the rifle barrel, stopped him cold. Then she stepped back. "You don't die today," she said, "but you leave today." Reeves stared at her, chest heaving. "I see you again," Clara added, "and you won't walk away." Behind her, Jack and Royce waited, silent. Reeves crawled to his feet, clutching his arm. He said nothing more. Just limped toward his horse, face pale and shaking. By the time the sun dipped behind the hills, they were gone. Gone for good. That night, Clara washed her hands at the basin, scrubbing dirt and blood she barely remembered touching. Her reflection in the window looked older than it used to, and stronger. She found Jack out back, whittling again. "What now?" she asked. He looked up, smiled soft. "Whatever you want." She considered that. "I want the kids safe." "They are. I want them to grow up without hiding." "They will." "I want to stop surviving." He paused his carving. "You already have," he said. She walked toward him, sat beside him. For a long time, they just listened to the night sounds, the creak of old wood, the far-off call of a coyote, the rhythm of breathing. Clara leaned back, eyes on the stars. "I used to think freedom was the end of running," she said. Jack waited. "But now I think freedom is when you choose to stay." He didn't speak, just reached over and took her hand. Down in the bunkhouse, Will was teaching Nora how to hold a carving knife without slicing her thumb. Eunice slept in Miss Bess's lap, dreaming of horses. Royce dozed in a chair by the fire, gun on his lap, boots still on. The ridge stood quiet, the threat gone. Spring would come for real this time. Crops would rise. Kids would grow. Days would get longer and nights less sharp. Not perfect, not easy, but chosen, and that mattered more. Clara squeezed Jack's hand once, then let her head rest against his shoulder. He didn't move. Didn't he need to? Because they weren't going anywhere. Not anymore. "I used to think freedom was the end of running, but now I think freedom is when you choose to stay."